Oh my God, are you going to talk about George Russell right now?
Yes, I know.
He made an Instagram post and Jacq didn't like it.
Just steal my... I came with all these facts. I was here, reading up.
He literally basically posted, like, my condolences to the Queen's family.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Grid Gals. This is episode 26 and we're here to recap the Italian GP, which is the Monza one. I always love Monza. Maybe it's just because I'm still riding the high from last season, but I do want to say, to begin, this might be a big spoiler, but ladies, we have another curse.
Do you want to describe the Monza curse for our listeners who aren't quite as deep in the black holes of F1 as we are?
Absolutely. So glad you asked. So the curse is, if you win the Monza GP, you DNF the next year. So this all started, another curse that our boy Charles Leclerc is involved in. Back in 2019, he won the Monza GP. He DNF'd in 2020. Then we have Pierre Gasly coming along, winning in 2020. He DNF'd in 2021.
Okay.
And then last year, of course, Daniel Ricciardo won. And this year, he DNF'd. So we'll have to see if the curse lives on next year.
So what I'm hearing is 2023 DNF for Verstappen at Monza.
Yeah, I'll put money on it.
Oh my God.
I just need to remember that for fantasy. Like, I don't know if I'll put real money on it, but I'll put, like, however much I paid to enter this league. I forget.
So it's a curse that Verstappen will get next year, is what you're saying.
I mean, if the curse has not been broken, I don't know how you break an F1 curse. Who knows? Maybe some sage. IDK. Max, maybe if you listen to this, you might want to invest in some sage ahead of the Monza GP next year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a pretty startling trend.
Okay, well, we'll be on the lookout. You heard it here first, folks. 2023 DNF.
That's like an obscure one I'm going to have to put in my calendar or something to even remember.
Yeah.
It's funny because I can't take credit. It's not like I connected the dots all on my own. I saw this on the wonderful app of Twitter, obviously. And as I was reading this tweet, I'm like, who even connected the dots? Who's just sitting on the couch one day and is like, yes, I see this trend in the results.
Okay, but like the commentators, they whip out the wildest stats. Who is it? Is it Crofty that just has an insane statistic for like every track, every driver? He has so many obscure stats that I'm surprised they didn't mention this on the broadcast.
I feel like this is something the internet pulled together and not necessarily our statisticians at F1.
True, but he's the one who said that like Lando DNFs every the middle race of every season.
Oh.
So whatever the 12th race of the season is, Lando for the last however many years had DNF'd it, except this year. He broke his curse, so there's hope.
Okay, I'm still holding out.
I'm just trying to find some way to dog on Max because it's just not interesting at this point anymore.
And Max can sit out the next 4 races and still.
They said he might win the World Championship in Singapore because after that it won't be mathematically possible for anybody to beat him.
Right.
So, real crazy season. Super exciting.
I thought this race was exciting even though it wasn't going to matter as much for the championship now.
No, I mean, it's not a tight championship, but I did think it was a good race. It was more interesting than Spa, for sure.
Yeah.
Or even, some of the other ones we've seen. I think we dogged on Spa a little bit already, but...
Mm-hmm. I do want to bring up something from our conversation last week because it seemed like I was a McLaren hater. Still share some love for the team here. After this race, though, I'm a little unhappy with some... I mean, we will get into that. But listening back to our last episode of the podcast, I feel like it was a little harsh on Lando.
Oh, I feel like your brother just dogged on you, and now you have to...
For sure.
Just gonna back it up.
Yeah.
But I also saw a very interesting tweet this week where they were talking about how McLaren has marketed Lando as... It all started when Sainz entered the picture on the team, and they were marketing him as the kid brother to him and how that's really stuck with him. And even though he has a ton of experience and has a ton of different businesses that he runs, he's still seen as someone who's inexperienced and almost stuck in that like younger brother-esque role. And I thought that was really interesting, and she really dove into a bunch of the marketing strategies. So I think for a future episode we'll have to go into how the teams market their drivers, because they're such important parts of the sport. But I wanted to back that up. Lando is a very experienced driver. I'm not a hater, still love her, but
that is interesting too, because Lando is young. He's one of the youngest drivers on the grid. So even though he's not one of the least experienced, he is one of the youngest.
Right.
So I do kind of get it, because he's only 22. Not that some of the other drivers are that much older. I think Max is 24, 25. So that's not a huge age gap, but you're right. I mean, for somebody who is essentially their number one driver, has really taken a big part in building the McLaren brand, it's kind of weird to present him as almost like a helpless kid a little.
Yeah, he does have a baby face, so I do feel like that plays into it a lot. Like, he does look very young still. But I'll be interested once Piastri joins the team, because that will make... Piastri is younger, correct?
Yeah, he's definitely younger, and I wonder if... I'm not saying that's obviously like the reason, but I wonder if strategically, as part of advancing Lando's image and Lando's brand, it was important to bring in someone younger than him. I don't think that was probably a huge factor, but I'm sure they're going to take advantage of it and try to start to shift the narrative a little.
Yeah, because I've already heard Lando be asked a couple questions about that, about no longer being the youngest driver and being the oldest on the team and kind of like the number one now. So we'll have to watch out for that. And I think it'd be interesting to do almost a brand of each driver episode.
Yeah,
that would be really fun. Because it was fun looking up to when I was trying to really understand how old he was compared to all of the other drivers on the grid. It was interesting looking up everyone's age and then thinking about how they're marketed and everything. But anyway, I think that would be a fun episode to look at everyone's brand. And
well, speaking of drivers' ages and brands, I did hear it specifically called out on the broadcast of the race. At one point, they were talking about Hamilton, and they were like, as the second oldest driver on the grid currently.
No way.
What?
Which he is. He's older than Seb.
I guess I never realized that.
Yeah, I think he's
I didn't realize that either.
He's a year older. It's not by much, but he just turned 37, I'm pretty sure. And I think Seb's 36. Or it's something like that.
On one of our summer episodes, we should talk about each of the drivers, kind of like their backgrounds, how old they are.
Well, it was just so
perceived.
funny because I feel like now that Hamilton is not competing for the championship, it's just, you never heard him previously talked about in that way. The second oldest driver on the grid. I mean, obviously after Alonso, and Alonso, again, also world champion, still, he's making a move next year. He's not even just he's still continuing a contract. Yeah. He's still, a little feisty around the paddock. But I never heard Hamilton referred to that way. So talk about an interesting shift.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. I mean, you know me. I'm not a huge Mercedes supporter, but it is kind of sad to see him grouped with the people that everyone assumes are on the out. They're
past their prime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anything else in the F1 gossip world this past week?
Well, unless you're living under a rock, you know that the Queen of England died.
Oh, okay. Yep.
She did.
R.I.P. And so a lot of the teams either have drivers from England or are teams from England, so a lot of them are paying tributes.
Oh my god, are you going to talk about George Russell right now?
Yes, I know.
He made an Instagram post and Jacq didn't like it.
Just steal my... I came with all these facts. I was here, reading up.
He literally basically posted my condolences to the Queen's family. It's not you're making it sound like it was some controversial.
No, I wasn't gonna. No, I was more so just saying. We were talking about it will be interesting to see what they do, what the teams do to pay tribute to the Queen, and I was like, who's gonna do a long emotional post about Her Majesty?
Hammy.
Also George.
Yeah, but Hammy's more in the feels.
I didn't see Hammy's post.
Yeah. It was long.
Well, to be fair, he's a knight.
Yeah.
Sir,
So
that's
true.
Sir Lewis Hamilton
Actually
to you.
spoken to the Queen. So the
I
long
feel like
message
that's- I
actually
feel like
seems
that's appropriate.
warranted.
I feel like it's appropriate.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's okay to comment on it, especially when they're asking you about.
So wait, clarify why Russell's post rubbed you the wrong way.
It didn't. I'm just saying that. I was
It's just
thinking-
because it's by George Russell.
Got it. Okay.
I said.
I mean,
you know
that's
what I'm
clearly-
gonna do. Not even.
say less. That's all you have to say.
Not even an Instagram story. It was like a full Instagram post with text.
Yep. Yeah, it was.
He's English.
He's like a British celebrity, basically. Think about it. I feel like they like have to, you know. Like
did all,
if
like, the James
if a
Bond
U.S.
stuff.
president dies, I feel like people are gonna make a post about it. Like even some like D-list talk show host, right? So of course George Russell is. I'm not saying he's the same, but
And I guess she's more of like a celebrity,
yeah, I feel like she's like a British
Then, like,
celeb,
the-
basically.
like the president of the U.S. Not the same.
Well, I don't know. She's like a weird hybrid. We don't really have monarchs here.
Yeah, that's what I like.
Um,
It's not like, you know what I'm saying. Like it's a different. It's I would equate her.
It's
more
like
to
when Betty
um,
White died.
Exactly. That's a good comparison.
That's
I wouldn't,
our
like, the
American
president-
royalty.
I wouldn't equate the queen directly to the president because like she holds no power.
Fair.
in a sense.
But a lot of people posted when Betty White died.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, fair.
I think the other big one was Albon.
Yeah.
Appendicitis.
That's no joke. And did you hear the update on him?
No.
No.
So he suffered a reaction to the anesthesia and went to respiratory failure.
Oh my god.
So they like intubate him, put in intensive care unit. Apparently he got better overnight almost and had a really great recovery. So I think they're sending him back home to do a recovery. And it sounds like he's going to still race in Singapore. But
That's terrifying. Also to be on a vent.
yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of family friends that are nurses, and after, you know, COVID, where unfortunately the topic of being on a vent came up quite a bit.
Right.
I didn't realize how intense it is on your body. I mean, if you're on a vent, like that's not a minor thing. you
Yeah,
know?
and it's hard to come off of them.
Yeah.
So for him to already be off and in recovery is great.
Well, and I know we have a couple of weeks until Singapore, but that is, I would not be surprised if he needed a longer break. I mean,
Yeah,
that's pretty.
because I don't even know how long it takes to recover from getting your appendix removed.
Yeah, I mean, true. That's emergency surgery in and of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm glad to hear that he's okay.
Yeah. So that was a big point in the F1 news this week. But then also the reserve driver, Nick deVries. Is that
Yeah.
how we're going to say his last name?
deVries.
deVries.
Yeah.
I heard a couple different pronunciations, yeah, but deVries I think was the one I heard the most.
So he was the reserve driver and did really well in qualifying the race, which we'll get into. But it was exciting to see someone else on the grid.
I'm not surprised. It's another little Dutch boy. You have a new favorite Dutch driver, I'm sensing, based on your facial expressions.
She said she's gonna pick another one because it's just not interesting for her.
Yeah, she's going to adopt little deVries as her new...
Him and Max are best friends. Okay, I don't know best friends, but they gave each other a very generous hug after the race.
I mean, he got points in his first race in F1, which is great. I
Yeah.
know Zhou Guanyu did that at the beginning of the season too, and they were talking about that during the race. But yeah, I mean, really impressive showing. I think hope to see more of him. I mean, obviously, hope Albon can come back, but I hope that means that he will find his way eventually to F1.
Yeah,
Well, and I saw he's a shared reserve driver. You know, he was racing for Williams this weekend, but he's the reserve driver, I think, for
Mercedes.
a couple of teams. I think
Yeah.
also maybe Aston Martin too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I thought they said 3. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I think he's actually
Like all the Mercedes power units?
I think so. I think he is in contention for potentially one of the seats next year. So
I mean, I hope he gets... I mean, I don't want to see Latifi go, but it would be exciting to see someone new on the grid.
Yeah.
well, he did outperform Latifi this weekend. So in
he
equal
did.
machinery.
Yeah, that was a little tough.
Well, should we dive into maybe some qualifying and then
Yeah, I think so.
go into the race?
Yeah, definitely should get into qualifying because the session, I mean, it was still good to watch. It wasn't a particularly crazy session like some of the ones we've seen this season. Still entertaining, still good. But I think what made this qualifying in general entertaining was that even after you were done watching the session, it was hard to tell where people were going to end up because again, kind of similar to some of the ones we've seen lately, now that we're in the second half of the season, you had a lot of people take penalties.
Right.
So I was even watching it trying to figure out, like, okay, wait. So they scored here, but then how, translating qualifying into the starting grid was a little weird this week.
I would have loved to see someone try to map it out.
Mm-hmm. And even the FIA didn't officially release the grid lineup for a while, much longer than it usually takes them to do so. So I'm sure that there was back and forth on correctly applying each penalty in the correct order. Because drivers were waiting around wondering where they were starting the next day.
I think the commentator said the only person that was in the same spot that they qualified in for the starting grid was Leclerc.
And shout out Leclerc. He got pole at one of the Ferrari home races, and he needed it. We all needed it. I'm not gonna lie, I think Monza would be a really fun GP to go to. They did say, from in terms of pure spectator, on one hand, just where this grandstands are, you can't necessarily see as much as some other circuits, but because they're going so fast, it's a circuit with the fastest lap times, the Tifosi go nuts. I think it would be definitely one of the races on my bucket list.
Makes sense as a Ferrari fan. You just see the picture of Leclerc, and there was a sea of red just supporting him, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
I'll add it to the list in 2024 just in case this DNF curse ends up being true.
fair enough.
Can't play it too safe.
It's not worth wasting the money.
Well, should we go through all of the penalties?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. So to start out, Max had a 5-place grid penalty, which was just for changing the internal combustion engines. They just called ICE. So that one wasn't a huge one. I think he qualified pretty well, ended up starting 7th. And then Ocon also had the same penalty, 5 places. Perez had a 10-place grid penalty for changing the ICE as well, but this was his first time, so that's why it was 10 versus 5. Which
interesting.
I walked through that.
Yeah, and now having it play out though, why is the first offense more than the second? I feel like the second offense would be more grid penalties.
Yeah, it's definitely not intuitive. I think it's because you take the big hit up front, and then the problem is it's because it's a certain number of components within your power unit. Once you hit the number of components initially, it's the 10 place, and then every time after that you get hit with 5. So it's you have this almost big ramp up, big penalty, and then you just you keep getting smacked.
Got it.
It's a repeat thing.
Yeah, but it's almost for smaller portions because you've built up all the other pieces already, right?
It doesn't matter which pieces. It's just the number. Once you hit a number, I think it's because it's you can't keep getting 10 place grid penalties every single race, but you get hit with something.
Got it. Weird.
Yeah, I remember reading that. I remember going over it on the episode, and I don't get it.
I think then moving down the line, Schumacher got 15, which I didn't even really.
What?
I didn't even really know. But until I went back and looked at all the penalties, he got 15 because he got a whole new gearbox and the internal combustion engine.
Oh, so it's a double stack penalty.
Yeah, so all of these go up from there. Bottas, same thing, internal combustion engine, turbo, and then a whole other piece too.
That's probably why it's 5, because you can stack them on top of each other after that. So it's if you had a 10 and a 10, you're back of the grid every time. So it's probably only 5 because you keep stacking them.
Right.
Alfa Romeo needed to make some changes, though, with their most recent races and how many issues they've been having.
Yeah, so I hope moving forward, the car will be able to perform at least a little bit better than it has been.
Yeah.
Then moving down the line, Magnussen got a 15-place grid penalty. Same thing as Bottas, the internal combustion engine, turbo, whole nother part too. I didn't notice that one either, to be fair. But then we get to Sainz, who was back of the grid. So this is where I'm kind of confused. When is it grid penalties versus back of the grid? Maybe it's just, again, how many pieces you take.
I think it depends on what it is that you're replacing, how many pieces, because it depends if it's part of there's a difference between power unit and gearbox for sure. You'd have to go back to the old episode and listen to it. We do break it down.
So he took obviously a lot. I wouldn't even list everything, but Hamilton, again, back of the grid, because he changed the full power unit. That's all they said. So it just must be like, they're like, okay, everything all at once. And then Yuki was the back of the grid because he changed the full power unit and he had all of his sporting penalties.
I do know if you do something within the time window of Parc Fermé, that's when it's a pit lane start. Like, that's the difference between even back of the grid and pit lane start.
Okay, yeah, then that would be a pretty big deal too.
The worst of the worst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I wonder, what happens if everybody, like if you have multiple pit lane starts? I mean, it's probably same as the back of the grid. Whoever qualifies better gets to go in front, but...
Yeah. It was weird to watch qualifying, though, and just be like, I have no idea how this is going to shake out in the end. Because the McLarens did really well. Mm-hmm. They qualified well, but then they started 3 and 4, which is crazy.
Yeah. It was nice to see them up towards the front. And that I know Russell was on the front row, which was awesome for Mercedes, I guess.
I was like, was it? Was it really? Tell you what, should we jump into the race? Because I feel like we got to talk about your McLarens.
Oh, man, I don't know if I'm ready.
Aw.
All right, so first let's recap the race results before we get into it. So we had 4 DNFs this race. Sebastian Vettel with Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso with Alpine, Lance Stroll with Aston Martin. Tough race for Aston Martin all around. And then this one, heartbreaking, Daniel Ricciardo with McLaren.
At least it wasn't his fault.
It was not. Very solidly not his fault. He was actually having a really great race.
We'll get there.
In 16th, Kevin Magnussen for Haas. In 15th, Nicholas Latifi for Williams. In 14th, Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri. In 13th, Valtteri Bottas with Alfa Romeo. In 12th, Mick Schumacher for Haas. In 11th, Esteban Ocon for Alpine. And then getting into the points. In 10th, Zhou Guanyu for Alfa Romeo. Haven't seen him up there in a hot second. In 9th, our newbie on the grid, Nick deVries for Williams. In 8th, Pierre Gasly for AlphaTauri. In 7th, Lando Norris for McLaren. In 6th, Sergio Perez for Red Bull. In 5th, Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes. In 4th, Carlos Sainz for Ferrari. And then going into our podium finishers, George Russell for Mercedes. In 2nd, Charles Leclerc for Ferrari. And in 1st, Max Verstappen for Red Bull.
Whoop, whoop.
Before we get into like the meat of all of it, I do think, we just read all the penalties, right?
Yep.
Both Sainz and Hamilton started 18th and 19th in this race and ended up 4th and 5th. Great drives from both of them.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. I always kind of like watching someone crawl all the way up from the back of the grid.
Yeah.
It's, it keeps it interesting, especially if whatever's going on out front isn't that interesting. Just watching somebody make up all those places is really fun.
And I think it was funny, too, because Alonso had to eat his words a little bit from last race about Hamilton. Because, he wasn't starting in first, and he did have an impressive race, given everything, so I thought that was a little funny.
And Nick deVries, not only 1 point, multiple points on his F1 debut.
Yeah, that was really cute. And he was really excited. I will say, at the very end of the race, I don't know if you guys heard the radio messages, but he couldn't get out of the car because his arms were so tired. He asked his engineers to come help get him out because he physically could not push himself out of the car.
Well, it was funny because on the radio you could hear him say, he's like, my shoulders.
Yeah.
And then what was it? Somebody on Twitter was like, yeah, because he's sore from carrying Williams.
Yeah, carrying Williams that entire race.
It's not like Latifi was helping him out.
Yeah, I feel like that just kind of sealed Latifi's fate for next year. But I think maybe starting from the very beginning, Lando.
Yeah, and it's funny because when the race started, out of habit, I just assumed it was Ricciardo. And the commentators even said, they're like, and Daniel Ricciardo drops back, and they had to correct themselves.
Yeah.
He had actually a really impressive start.
Yeah.
Lando immediately got past. I forget who started behind him with all of the grid changes and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Lando started in 3rd, Danny started in 4th. And so then when you saw the papaya cars split on the track and a bunch of people jump in between them, naturally, I think because Jacq and I were watching it together, she was like, whatever. And then I realized, I'm like, oh my God, no, Jacq, like, that was Lando.
Yeah.
Danny's up in 3rd.
I mean, and here I am, I'm like, oh my God, Monza. It's Monza. Anything's possible, baby. I didn't think we were going to have, like last year, that would have been a complete 180 from the season he's been having. But it looked good to see him get his momentum back. And I will say, that man did not make a single mistake that entire race.
And Gasly even said that, too, behind him.
Gasly, and he was following team orders. He was being a good team player, holding Gasly off. And he, so that Lando could pit in the middle of the race and then hopefully get in between. I don't think it worked exactly how they wanted it to work, but he did not make a single mistake that entire race. And we did watch this race a little bit delayed, and every single time I tell myself, Jacqueline, don't go on Instagram. And out of habit, sometimes I like open it and momentarily forget. And I do follow McLaren on my personal Instagram too, and I spoiled the race results for myself.
Oh, Jacq!
So I'm going into this race knowing one of them, I didn't see which one which, I just saw the positions because they do the positions a little bit larger than names. And so I glanced quick and was like, oh my God, no. So I knew one got points and one DNF'd. And
oh no,
I'm automatically assuming obviously it's my driver. That proved to be true. But especially when it came down to the last 5 laps.
Yeah.
And the car just died. Like, are you kidding me? He did everything right this race.
There was
everything right this race.
A lot of Team McLaren issues,
Oh
and
my
not the
God.
driver issues, because Lando's start itself was because the settings for his car. It wasn't even a bad start on his part.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I was really surprised by that. He had a really bad start. I think he dropped, 3 places? And for him, like, that's not typical at all.
Makes sense then that was the case.
And then they had a really slow pit stop for him.
That's
the other thing that really held him up. So
after all that hard work that Daniel put in, I mean, that ended up screwing Lando over, was that long pit stop.
So McLaren was not on it.
Neither was Aston Martin.
Ooh.
2 DNFs. And even, like, in qualifying, I mean, it's been a sad season to be a Seb fan.
Yeah.
Every time, because he'll get like 16th, he's dropped after Q1, he's screaming into his radio, like, are you just basically like, you gotta be kidding me, because the car's not there. And we definitely saw that this race. Neither of them could even finish. Like, it's a sad way to see his last season. Like, Stroll, I don't care, but I want, okay, I don't expect him on the podium anymore, but at least, like, maybe some points.
See, I'm having fun seeing him battle Stroll, because there was contact between Stroll and Vettel in the first lap, because they're fighting now, which is great to see, because Vettel's like, you know what? I'm leaving. I don't need to baby you anymore, so...
Go for him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put up with Stroll either. Screw him.
Like, don't need to keep Daddy Stroll happy. You're
No.
off the you're off the roster.
And it's not like anyone's fighting to get into that car this year. It's not like they really have any hope of being anywhere near competing for anything. So it's like, why would they put someone else in the car? He's like got nothing to lose.
Yeah, that's true.
What was I gonna say? Oh, my other main takeaway from the race that was really interesting, we've talked about this before, the FIA and the application of rules. So replace Latifi with Danny Rick. This was not exactly, but very similar to what we saw in Abu Dhabi last year, and everyone was very upset by how anticlimactic the end of the race was. They finished under an actual safety car. Obviously, Danny Rick's car was still very much so on the track. It wasn't safe for them to really resume racing.
Well, not exactly, because there's the message of all the drivers saying on lap 52 of 53, the track is clear. Like, the track is clear. There was at least one lap.
It was clear, and that's what they were saying. The application of the rules was, this is how it should have played out in Abu Dhabi last year, was just that they should have finished under a safety car. But, ladies, how boring was that to watch?
Well, okay, they didn't have to bring out the safety car. They had the option to red flag it. they could have red flagged it instead of doing the last couple of laps under a safety car and then restarted from a standing stop. Mm-hmm. They said initially they thought they'd be able to move it faster, which is why they went safety car instead of red flag. Mm-hmm. But what they were saying is I guess it wasn't as easy to move as they thought because something was like jammed or locked up. And they're like, at that point, they also could have called a red flag. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. They just finished it under the safety car. Which, you know, I think, yeah, it's well within their right to do so. It's absolutely the rules. I mean, personally, as a Leclerc fan, he was in second. At this point, Ferrari had taken a gamble earlier in the race under a virtual safety car and pit him. Mm-hmm. Which, honestly, I don't think was a bad call, actually. I think Ferrari, this race, were not the circus we've been seeing the last couple of races. Obviously, it's easy to see the race results of second and fourth and say, like, okay, they made a mistake. But they just tried a different strategy. It didn't pay off.
Yeah,
and we've seen that before, but it wasn't like a stupid call they made. Like, they've made some bad calls. I think this just turned out to be the wrong one. But anyway, to finish my initial thought, Leclerc was in second. And there was too much time. He was like 17 seconds behind Max. And there wasn't enough time. There weren't enough laps left for him to, like, actually be able to make it up. So when I originally saw the safety car come out, I got excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to bunch up. And then on the restart, it'll be a real race like Abu Dhabi. And they just said, what? There was never a restart.
I don't think that there's any way to appease everyone with this ruling.
No.
Because I've heard it a couple different ways. Like, there was a tractor that came out and was taking Danny Rick's car off the track. So they're like, then it should have been red flagged because there's a big crane on the track and that's really dangerous for the drivers. So it should have been red flagged. But then I've also heard you only red flag if there's a bunch of debris and it's going to take a lot of time to clear the track. So I've heard like a ton of different things. And if they would have let them race that one lap, then they would be like, well, that's not how the rules are laid out. You're not supposed to do that. And then it's a whole saga over and over again.
Well, then you get the whole, like, do the lapped cars unlap themselves?
The lapped cars did unlap themselves. So it was this whole, I mean, reading everything, and of course Hamilton and Total Wolff had something to say about it after. They're like, oh, getting PTSD from this.
Okay,
like,
but I mean, like, do you expect them to not say anything? It's the same situation.
Like, how many years am I gonna have to endure this?
It was last season. It was literally last season. This is the first time the situation has reemerged since like the infamous race where like it's probably like the Hamilton's lowest point.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely made that clear. It was his lowest point.
Yeah. So I don't think it's ridiculous for him to bring it up in this instance.
Well, that's why I'm glad that Verstappen is having the success that he is, because it's like, okay, now there's no question that he's earned it.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I almost feel like that's why they should have had them race at the end. Verstappen is running away with the championship. If you just restart the race, like, even if Leclerc won this one, that's what? A 6-point difference? There's like a 70-point difference.
It's over 100.
Between Leclerc and Max? Okay,
I'm pretty sure.
I didn't realize it was triple digits. Regardless, like, it's not like this would have an impact on the season.
Yeah.
Where obviously in Abu Dhabi, it was different in terms of the season. Mm-hmm. This is like, okay, maybe it would have changed the race result. It's not going to change the season result. So, like, make it fun for the fans. Considering you set a precedent in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, but now there's a new race director and he needs to set a precedent that it's like, it's not about making it fun.
Oh, that's
for the
true.
fans.
Michael
it's about
Massey
making
did
it.
lose
Yeah.
I feel like, that makes
So that's what I mean. I'm like, I feel like with everyone, like, no one could win. Because, like, the Tifosi obviously wants to see Leclerc get the chance to race. But then if they do, then they're like, okay, well, now they've set this precedent where, like, you
I
hurry
forgot
up.
it was a new guy.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to lose his job.
Yeah.
Well, I have a bone to pick with Mary because the entire back half of the race, she's like, we need a safety car. We need a safety car. And then it's at my expense.
Okay, I should have clarified. We needed a safety car and a restart. It's like a genie, right? When you ask for a wish and they give it to you, but like something's off, you know?
Yeah.
Like that is how I felt. I'm like, well, I need to be more specific in my wishes next time. The universe gave me what I wanted, but not really.
There's always next race.
I'm so sorry. Like, just saying it doesn't even... Oh, God.
Well, okay. I guess overall, you know, not thrilled with how it ended, But I do think Ferrari showed up. And, like, thank God. One of your home races, at least you didn't make a complete ass of yourself out there.
Yeah.
You know, we could hope and wish that things would have turned out differently, but solid showing compared to where they've been this season. So I'll take it. Not thrilled, but I'll take it. And Jacq, I'm so sorry. That was just so unfortunate because it really wasn't his fault this time.
Don't even give me that face. It was not his fault. He had a great race.
I said
No,
it was his fault.
I think the face was for this time.
Yeah.
I want to hear it.
Well, hey, this could
I would love to see Danny Rick do well. It's just...
Well, and he needs to if he wants a seat next year.
Okay, we don't need to like get my blood pressure all the way up right now, okay? Just pile it on while I'm having a bad week. Like
Look, I haven't done any bragging over here, so I feel like this is a good episode for me.
Well, on that note, if you guys have enjoyed this episode, please remember to follow, like, subscribe, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, and hit up our website, gridgals.com, for links to all of our socials, or to reach out and let us know what you think, what you want to hear. We'd love to hear from you.
And that's a checkered flag for this session. We'll see you back on the grid next week.